Hi, my name is Caitlin, and this is Red Moon Radio. Today, I have Tomiekia Johnson calling in from Chowchilla Prison in California. Tomiekia joined my interview with Amy Ichikawa a couple weeks ago, and I wanted her to call me directly this time so you could hear her a little better. Still a little staticky, so I added subtitles, but I hope you have the patience to listen all the way through because what she has to say is extremely important. I also included Tamikia's change.org petition in the description, and I ask that you all sign it and help us put pressure on Gavin Newsom to commute her sentence. Thank you so much for joining me today. And without further ado, here is Tamikia. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good
Thank
morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for calling me again. The call,
Problem.
yeah, it didn't come through as well last time, so I wanted to make sure people could hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. So how's your morning going?
So far so good, actually, today.
Good. I'm
So
glad to
far
hear
so
it.
good.
So last time we spoke, you ended up having to get off the call because of you were being spied on, and yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you were able to call me earlier. So less people were in the room, but I hope that you were okay after that.
So I was, it was funny because I went back over to where the lady was like tucked away in this little staff area. And after I had already verbalized that I saw her, then she left. So like,
Oh,
mouth thing.
okay.
Mm-hmm. It just confirmed what I already knew. Like you left because you heard me call you out on it, and you weren't as conspicuous as you thought you were. So now you on to the next thing. So it's confirmation.
Yeah. So is there any particular topic that you really want people to know and get out into the world? Because I really want this to be about you and what you want people to know, since your voice is so often silenced. So I really want this to be guided in terms of what you want the country to know and what you want the world to know about what's going on in women's prison in California and across the country.
Well, I wanted to talk just a little bit about how women's prisons started, so that we could be separated from the male population. And I also wanted to talk about how I have a pending commutation. Governor Newsom signed the legislation to implement SB 132.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom, yeah.
And incidentally, he also has the power to commute me to an immediate release based on the merit of my application, my prison records, my parole plan. Like I'm like a solid candidate to receive the benefit of commutation, which I feel like is could be highly considered, knowing that I'm having the most difficult time with the male population in the prison being a target because I'm trying to recall SB 132.
Yeah, plus Tamikia.
Your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I mean, I was talking to Amy when we were waiting for you to call back. You shouldn't even be in there to begin with. So I think you are very worthy of a commuted sentence.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, I believe that too, the first part. I guess I'm just kind of tired of saying it. I agree, especially with the circumstances of my case. It's no secret about, how egregious the prosecutorial misconduct and everything was done. Like, there is so much evidence.
Well, and you have a record of...
Anyway, okay, let me walk somewhere else to see if it works better.
Okay. So yeah, it cut out for a second when you were talking about, evidence in your favor, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the governor has the right to, if he feels like there were a lot of errors, as they would call them, or even misconduct, and a lot of injustices and inconsistencies within the course of a trial. So he can use the power of commutation to annul some of the injustices that I experienced that placed me, in my perspective, wrongly incarcerated from the beginning.
Yeah.
And being that I have to face that reality every day, that I feel like I shouldn't be here. And also now the added pressure of looking over my shoulder, making sure that I'm safe, making sure that I can find safe spaces to run my program in prison. It's like, it makes everything all the more difficult for me to live like a productive life within the circumstances that I'm in. I sent a commutation application to Governor Brown before he left office.
Okay.
So that's like 5 years ago, right? And I was getting positive feedback even from Governor Brown's team early on. Hello?
Yeah, hi. So before we got knocked off, you were talking about Governor Brown and how you had filed the paperwork 5 years ago.
Right. I submitted my first application with Governor Brown. And I did get positive feedback from his team early on. And what I mean by positive feedback, I just mean that the governor's office contacted my attorney and noted the fact that my application and all the insight that I submitted was impressive. I had done an interview with The Guardian where they basically wrote an article and they did a voice recording interview with me. So they had it online. So the governor's office commented on how impressive that I was in the piece that they listened to. So it's not like I'm like this unworthy candidate, unworthy individual. And Governor Newsom has had that same information. I had to update it over the years, but that same information, he's had it for 4 years. And he's still stalled on actually signing the commutation and sending parole orders over to the women's prison where I'm housed. So that's where I'm at.
He didn't?
That's where I am right now. I'm stalled in the process.
Okay. Yeah, he stalled it. Do you think that's because he wants to bring less awareness to what he's doing with SB 132 and things like that?
I don't know. I kind of think that he just has his own timetable on when he wants to do certain things.
Oh, okay.
I'm of the opinion
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That he's a bigger person than these types of circumstances getting in the way of doing the right thing.
Interesting.
So I'm really thinking that, it's tough for me to say that, but I have to be fair on what I've seen him do, his conduct, his speeches that he makes, different news coverages, articles I read about him. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because of totality of circumstances. I think that he got duped on SB 132.
Okay.
And I really do. And he gets a second chance too to correct things and acknowledge when something was a mistake. I'm asking for that as well, so I can't be hypocritical and not extend that same olive branch to him. So, I have a lot of anger too. Obviously, I'm directly affected, but I can never lose sight of the human aspect of this, and it's so incredibly nuanced in the way everything is playing out. So I don't particularly think he's being callous towards me. I just think that he has a plan.
Okay.
It's not going as fast as I'd like it to go, but I do believe he has a plan.
I don't know if Amy told you, but my dad put a gun in my mom's mouth. So, but for the grace of God, go I, like it easily could have been her in this situation. So I very much deeply empathize with what you're dealing with and with your daughter and what that's doing to her. So your story means a lot to me. Yeah, of course.
I have to be so tough, to fly above all of the idiocracy with this situation and all of the pain and suffering that is causing you that I kind of like put that aspect in a compartment
Yeah,
so that I could be emotionally tough to continue to fight on. But in my circumstances, that's why I'm here, are so tragic.
I know.
But a lot of people don't even think twice about what that experience was like for me to lose my way and it happened with my daughter and trying to mother and parent her from here and not being able to see her because of COVID protocols and my parents having a stroke, both parents having a stroke, can't drive the 400 miles anymore. I haven't seen I've seen my daughter one time in 3 years.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. That's devastating.
The last time I saw her, she had grown to be almost as tall as me, and then I hugged her, and her body just felt so different. And that's all I think about now is how different her body felt, and that's like my reminder and my symbol that I'm missing so much because of these circumstances.
Yeah. It's truly, it's just wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong across the board. So, you have someone all the way in Texas who's going to be fighting for you. I promise. That's where I live.
Thank you so much. Okay, cool. My family, my other half of my family's from Texas, my dad's house.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, they're from Dallas and Long Beach.
Are you able to have any kind of community there? Like, do you have friends that help you see through this kind of thing? Because I know that you're the only plaintiff in that
Yeah.
in that in that particular prison, right? You're the only one.
No, there's actually 3 others. They're on a different yard,
Oh, okay.
but they're like nowhere near as vocal as I
Okay.
am about these. I provided like so much more info, and not to like undermine all of their efforts and their bravery, but the people here in the institution have made it clear that I'm the target more so than them.
And that's because you're so vocal and getting yeah,
I'm
okay.
so vocal, getting the word out, exposing things for what they really are, not backing down, even after tons of retaliation. I utilize retaliation to silence you, cripple you, depress you, so that you can stop whatever the efforts are that you're forging against the system. So even after they did everything that they could possibly do, I just carried on. I went through the setback. My housing is different. Like my whole programming, where I live, everything is different now. But I continue to do whatever I.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
This isn't right, and it doesn't matter what you do to me. This is not right.
Good for you. I mean, that's strength of spirit right there. But it's true. Like if you don't allow people, like you can keep a free mind, you can keep your spirit, you can keep your dignity no matter what. And it's clear that you're doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's God. I mean,
Yep.
I don't make it. I have no problem proclaiming that that's my driving force. It's like I'm powered by the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
I'm a Christian, unapologetically.
Me too.
And it's my faith.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think lately with you is that God chose you to fight this because you could.
Yep. So
Yeah.
many people don't understand that. So sometimes I can't even make that a part of the conversation because it's like crickets on the other end. Like folks don't understand that faith and God being behind you, showing you something, choosing you, like a divine appointment, like for such a time as this. That is exactly how I view what I'm going through. It has to be me. So I go into situations and circumstances. Of course, the flesh is going to be doubtful and it's going to fear. That's what it's supposed to do. But I try to allow my faith to drive past the flesh, knowing that God still has me. This is what I'm supposed to do. Even if it's painful, even if it takes things away from me, it strips me of something of the worldly identity and things and material things, that He's on the other side and we're still going to be carrying on. We're still going to be marching. We're still going to be trooping. Like, we're going to get through it and then we're going to go through the next valley and the same thing, you know? So I always put that ahead of my fears.
Amen. I felt you so much in everything you just said.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's because you know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that a bit with myself, that I was sort of built to fight this, and I'm not even close to having to deal with what you've dealt with, but just parts of my story. Is there something you want to say for the 60 seconds before you call back?
I just want to say really quick that men and women were never meant to be housed together in prison.
Nope.
You know, they started a women's prison back in the early 1800s, and they did it on purpose. They needed to separate the women from the men. They did it here in California, San Quentin. They did it in Indiana. They started out with like a farm type of incarceration system for women. So they understood that there needed to be a separation. So
Yeah.
why are we going back on that today?
Yeah. I do think you're right that it's a lot of manipulation. Like I was going to say, when the ACLU, the call dropped, but this is important to say. So when the ACLU negotiated on behalf of trans-identified men prior to things like SB 132, trans-identified men asked for third spaces. And Chase Strangio and the ACLU turned around and fought for what we see now, because it's become more about validating this identity versus actually standing for what's right and what people would call the true trans. I don't, but what the people that have authentic dysphoria that ended up in prison truly identifying that way, they've even chosen to stay in men's prison because of the availability of resources are greater in men's prison. So it truly is the men being transferred right now are taking advantage of a system knowingly.
Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
Hello. So when we got off, you were talking about the separation of men and women's prisons starting in the 1800s, even on the farm, which I found interesting because last time we spoke, you spoke about how things like the rose bushes that and the gardens are being taken down. And it seems like that was always kind of given to women, even since when it started, that kind of joy of, even when incarcerated, being able to work on the land and being able to garden and have that kind of, yeah.
Yay. You get it. If you know, since this cost, they cut down like half of our trees. They're like continuously butchering down this whole yard to where it's just barren and more depressing than it already is. So you're exactly right with that connection. It started out to be something that women can like till the land, till the earth, give back to Mother Nature, take from Mother Nature what it has for us. And that it was like doing tours, and of course there were more like subservient back then, and like the traditions were like the woman is in the home and the household. So that was the model that they followed, right? I don't have any qualms with that. That's just what it was for those times. But that was the idea of what needed to be incarceration for women who needed to be rehabilitated to be restored back to home. Not what is happening today.
Yeah. And what I find so devastating about it is that even before the ACLU and Chase Strangio, when they were negotiating on behalf of trans-identified men, incarcerated men, they asked for third spaces. They didn't even want to be transferred to the women's prisons. So the ones that are doing this now are by and large taking advantage of the system.
Absolutely.
And
you know what? Shame on the ACLU, because they're interveners on the case that we have in the federal court to recall SB 132, and they're intervening on the side of biological men, even though they have a substantial amount of documentation and evidence, some of which I provided, of all of the harms that many women are experiencing and enduring and surviving in a place that's supposed to be rehabilitated. Any professional knows that you cannot rehabilitate, actively and successfully rehabilitate in a state of perpetual survival. The two don't mix. It's oil and water, and it'll never mix. So now you're undermining your own objective to rehabilitate women and restore us back to our families. Now it's just surviving. It's really survival of the citizen here now. That's exactly how I feel. I'm in a state of regression, and it's only because of my personal faith journey and dedication to making myself better and improving every day that is allowing me to stay afloat. I'm quite different from the average woman here. So if I'm having a hard time staying above water, then imagine women who don't have any faith, who don't have any structure, who are trapped in addiction still, who are still in the gang life and the gang mentality, or who are still just hustling all the time within the black market here. Like, they have no hope. And they don't even know it. They don't even realize it.
That's such a good point, because prison is really supposed to be about rehabilitation, and it seems like what people think of it now is punishment, and that's not what it is designed to do, and not what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to rehabilitate people to be back in society and to be well-adjusted, functioning members of society, especially incarcerated women, because women, like the majority of the 90% have sexual abuse history and domestic abuse history, and it's clear that it's stemming from trauma already, the reason that they're in there. So it really devastates me too to learn that men have more psychiatric services available, all these services are more just available to them than for the women.
That's exactly right. If you look at the women are just underserved and disrespected, point blank period, all around. If you look at San Quentin, they are turning that into an actual facility, rehabilitation facility. So that further drives home the point that the cornerstone of prison today is to rehabilitate. So if you're still propagating the messaging that prison is for rehabilitation by extending rehabilitation services, groups, facilitation, and everything under the sun, and San Quentin men's facilities, then I ask, what about us? What about the women? Because the comparison amongst groups and amongst classes and vocations, this place is so antiquated and so far behind the times. It's so non-preparatory for what the actual society has to offer people in jobs and career paths and education. Everything here is behind the eight ball, like seriously behind the eight ball. And San Quentin is like a college. That's because they value the male life more so than they value the female life. They are willing to put as many resources and people, funding, opportunities into the men's facilities that it takes to make them more successful. we don't even have a quarter of the opportunities that San Quentin facility has.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That's so infuriating, especially because men commit worse crimes. Like, I mean, I try not to be a man, but come on, like they commit the most violent crimes. They're like, come on. If there's a population of humans that have more chance of successful rehabilitation, it's women over men, in my opinion. And I feel like my opinion's pretty well researched. So that's, and it's just like an inequality too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Your opinion is valid because it's based on facts and a pattern of society.
Yeah.
Like when we started out with prison for women, the Prison Policy Initiative, they have a statistic that says between 1980 and 2020, the rate of incarceration for women doubled the rate of men, and the number of incarcerated women grew from 26,326 to 152,864. That's a 475% increase. And today, we're at 172,000. So that tells me that not only do you not care about actively rehabilitating all these women, but I feel like this was orchestrated in some kind of mean, twisted way by the government.
Yeah.
Incarcerate more women.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also like I've read that women, like the DWIs for women have drastically increased. I can't imagine that more women are driving drunk. It's like, yeah, I think you're right.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, not many people know that statistic is up that way. I was talking to a facilitator for DUI. Mind you, there isn't a DUI class or group in the institution, okay? Let's start there. This young lady was trying to put something together to be able to reach more women who are here under DUI convictions because it has drastically grown with life sentences, okay?
Life sentences? Oh God. That's like
women are getting life sentences for DUI fatality collisions.
But men will get what? Not even a year for raping someone.
They might get 6 years for a premeditated murder against a woman.
And it does seem to be that women that defend themselves like against domestic violence, the one time that they end up, it's like I feel like I read so often that women that end up, accidentally killing their partner in domestic violence situations, they get the harshest punishments, it seems.
Well, I have a theory. You ready for this?
Yes.
Accompanied by the statistics I just gave you. So there has to be some type of planning. Because we don't just grab numbers out of the air, statistics out of the air. They have matrix that they put together to determine what crimes are going to be charged, what the circumstances and the elements of the crime are going to be, and what type of sentencing and enhancements are going to be added. So I believe that because domestic survivors are oftentimes mothers, educated, pillars in the community, the head of the household, basically good contributing citizens that they have purposely given us harsher sentences because you're going to be those same type of individuals in prison. And in prison, in this particular prison, the women that are the most functional, the most educated, the most talented, the most skillful, we actually run the prison.
Wow.
So, yes. So it feels like to me that we're giving the harsher sentences because we become lifers. And when you are a lifer in prison, you have an automatic label that you're going to be a mentor. You're going to be a leader. Because you're going to keep balance in a system that's otherwise chaotic and too unpredictable for the staff to be able to successfully manage it on a daily basis. So we are the disparities of the country.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That's
Otherwise, there will be. Go ahead.
No. This is wild. I wouldn't have ever thought about this. Keep going.
So if you look at lifers, statistics show that after 10 years of imprisonment, no matter what the charge is, after 10 years of imprisonment, because mind you, most lifers, survivors of domestic violence like myself, this is our first offense. We are less likely to come back to prison for any charges. The system knows this. So why would we be the last group of people to be allowed a second chance opportunity when our counterparts who don't get clean and sober, who don't successfully rehabilitate, who commit crime after crime after crime, who are on 3 strikes, 4 strikes, and 5, why are they able to go back into society quicker than us?
Yeah. So it's like you're almost being used as unpaid employees to keep the prison afloat.
So all the time that I'm the best commodity that CDC has. Because if you look at my resume before I came to prison, I had a bachelor's degree already. So there's no upward mobility for me education-wise. I already worked a 13, 14-year career in law enforcement. So all you can do is take from my skill set. All you can do is take from my education. All you can do is take from my knowledge, my life experience. You're taking from me, never, ever.
I have 60 seconds remaining.
You sent me here to take from my natural resources as a human commodity.
I'm trying to I'm sorry, I'm a little stunned because I would have never even considered that. My assumption would have been just like male sexism, to be honest, about like, because I feel like men sometimes just think that women are way more powerful and devious than we are. And so it just or the judge might empathize with the dead man. That's sometimes what I think about with rape too, like rape sentences for men being lighter. It's because men don't even realize how awful that is because they don't have that kind of perspective on sex. So there's so many more judges that are men, so they're going to empathize with the male experience more.
Hello?
Yes, hi again. So we were discussing the difference of incarceration or sentencing for males and females, and specifically the sentencing for domestic violence victims or survivors. And I want to ask, how much longer can you stay on the calls? Because I do have a last question I always like to ask, so I just want to make sure I know the time frame of when I can ask that, or when I should.
This one is going to be the last one, so
Okay.
we probably have like 13 minutes left because my job just started up. And once again, I'm being extended, utilizing my past experience, my past job experience in law enforcement. I'm actually training a young lady to go to a firehouse, a program that I can't even participate in, mind you, because of my hard original sentence. I cannot participate in something that I'm more suitable for that I would actually benefit from other than the vocations that won't do anything to me here. I can't participate, but I'm good enough to train them to go over and do a job that I can't do.
The firehouse, is that like being a firefighter?
The inmate firefighters?
Okay, yeah, so they're using you as they're employing you to train. That's not even cogent, like intellectually. It doesn't that line of it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, but it's consistent with what I said before about being a surrogate for the system.
Yeah.
It's not here to better me because it can't. It's impossible. I came here already better.
Yeah.
I came here far exceeding the staff who manages me every day.
And they probably know that too.
They do.
Wow. My last question is usually, and it might take you a minute to answer, so I'm going to ask it now. I always like to end these episodes with what you would want to tell people right now, or what you want to say to get them to know that it's time to speak out about this issue and to give, words of encouragement to people that might be too afraid to speak out, that now is the time.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist sometimes, and it's only because most often they have a lot of truth to them. And there's a stigma because the folks that are behind the different conspiracies that are creating circumstances on purpose to destroy lives, they don't want you to know that that's what's happening. But I do believe that there is a planned attack against children, girls and boys.
Yep.
A planned attack against women
Mm-hmm.
to change them, modify them into some different sort of human.
I mean, I don't even consider it conspiracy theory anymore. It's just what's happening. I agree with you.
Ooh. Okay, well, I'm in good company.
Yeah.
But things like this social experiments start off in prison.
That's a really good point.
And these different doctors and scientists and administrators and public officials get to monitor a certain type of data. This is a controlled environment for the most part. They get to see what these different medicines they're giving people do, like the testosterone type. They get to see how it's affecting a human body and brain. They get to see how mastectomies are playing out and how many are bots versus successful, and how is the population getting along with being housed with biological men when they weren't brought to the table to get their informed consent to allow them to come here in the beginning. How is everything panning out? What's happening to the cohesiveness of the ecosystem? This is all data that they're not collecting in plain sight because they don't want anybody to know what's really happening. So there's a group of people somewhere that knows exactly the harm that they're causing in this prison with all of these different genetically modified programs and making men and women coexist together in the same prison quarter. If it's happening here, they're going to continue to take it out to broader society.
Yeah. Yeah. So women in prison are being used as guinea pigs, or both sides, but this particular issue is going to impact women so much more. And you're right, they're definitely coming for the kids. It's clear as day. Anyone that doesn't want to see that's just burying their heads in the sand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to live your life every day like I'm living mine right now, because that saying is true. First they came for them, then they came for me. It's so true. If you want to live the way I'm in circumstances, you have to get past your fears.
Yeah.
You have to set aside cancel culture and what it means to speak the truth today in consequence. You have to get past that barrier because I'm living proof. Once you get past certain barriers, people do start to listen. People do start to change their attitude. Once they see that you've gone through the struggle, then that empowers them to follow behind you. So people have to call a spade a spade. They have to speak out when they see these different things. They have to formulate plans, orchestrate events, phone calls, letter writing, interviews, podcasts. They have to do everything they can within their human capabilities, even if they're small, to be able to speak out against all of the things that they're seeing happen with this particular issue in society. You cannot stay silent because it will come for you some kind of way. You will see it show up at your doorstep. You don't have to.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
You don't have to go out in the world to be affected by it. It will show up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's clear with COVID and And I mean, I didn't see through that as quickly as I should have, but they're trying to see how far they can go in controlling us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And it was successful for those 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
COVID kept people off the street. Like, you literally went outside the door and you saw nothing moving. You didn't see a neighbor driving down the street.
Nope.
You didn't see anybody walking, jogging, someone going to work, a kid going to school. You literally saw nothing. It was a ghost town.
The school thing breaks my heart. Children were just sacrificed. That really puts that children back. Do you know if your daughter was she's been able to stay up with her schooling? Like, because I just feel like so many kids got behind.
I think depending on where you live geographically, it affected their children different. It affected their school system different. Fortunately for us, by the grace of God, my daughter was in a position where I don't feel like she lost much time. I don't feel like she lost much in education or social interaction with friends and teachers. I don't feel like they have had an adverse effect that I can actually see today. I just think she was in a fortunate situation. But I've heard so many situations where it was way worse than what she experienced. And I couldn't imagine dealing with the pressures of that as well as all these other things. So my heart goes out to parents who feel like their kids are behind.
Yeah.
And now they have to contend with new policies that are coming to hunt their children today.
Yeah.
The kids are getting a bad rap right now.
Yeah, I mean, both sides are really coming for them, and I know California is about to pass a law that will take custody from parents who won't medicalize their children, and then the other side is threatening to take kids away from the ones that do, and it's a mess.
Yeah, it really is.
But I'm really glad to hear that your daughter is
small coalitions.
Sorry, what?
I said we need to really form coalitions of people together to push against what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's possible. I'm one person, and I've pushed so hard in different directions and gotten so many different things changed since I've been in prison. I'm just talking about like all sorts of things. I'm one person, one voice, one pen, one piece of paper. But I was able to get so many different things moved and adjusted since I've been incarcerated. So it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, women need to understand none of us are free when the most marginalized women are experiencing this. Because again, but for the grace of God go I. You know, like if they're gonna do this to you, they'll have no problem doing it to the rest.
No, not at all. And I feel like you could judge the health of a society based on how it treats its most marginalized population.
Amen. Yep. How it's treating women and kids right now is
standards.
Yeah.
America is sick.
Yeah.
It's in California.
Oh God, yeah. And that's what worries me the most, is because so often California sets the trend for the rest of the country. You know, you see it with marijuana, all this stuff. It's like, I don't want this.
I know.
Yeah.
It's so true. That's why I'm always reaching across state lines to other people that are incarcerated or free people. And I'm trying to check the temperature all the time. How is your state feeling about California right now? You know, what are you guys doing to make sure that your state doesn't follow down the pipeline?
Yep. Yeah. And it's like Washington already has, Oregon. Yeah. And then the other coast, you know, New York is doing it too, but California still sets the trend. And that's what's so concerning to me. And it's interesting what you said about Newsom, because honestly, Newsom scares me the most out of everybody. He does. I really don't, because I think he could easily become president if Joe Biden. I think they're going to force Joe Biden to step down somehow, and I think that Newsom is going to be the one, and I'm really worried that he'll win. But it's good to know that you think he's just misinformed, and giving him a chance, because
I do.
that gives me a little bit of hope that he can be reasoned with.
Yeah, I think a lot of presidential candidates, people in high office are typically overly influenced by the people around them.
Yeah, you're right.
If you can change the people around them, reach them through the people around them, they'll change.
Okay. Yeah, or if enough of the cultural apparatus is changing too, and they're talking about women's sports more and more, they're talking about gender medicine more and more, but they're not talking enough about this. And I do think this learning about what's going on with women's prisons truly will, if enough people know about it, they're going to want it to stop. Because you saw it in the UK, as soon as the public became aware, with Scotland in the UK, it changed. And that really gave me some hope, because I have been so devastated with the lack of care on this issue. But it seems to be that when people actually know what's going on, they do not want it to happen.
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I know that it's going to change. Like I've already been to the mountains.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Going through the struggle and gaining in people. We just need more people to forge around us, and we guide them correctly to where we need to be. Because we're at the forefront of this, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
But we just have to keep doing our part